In this video, we're going to be discussing the Montreal Canadiens, their dreadful start, and their lack of offense. And that's coming up next. So the 2017-18 NHL season is underway, as we all know. The Montreal Canadiens are off to a very slow start with a record of 1 win and 3 losses. They opened the season with a victory against the Buffalo Sabres, which came in the form of a shootout, and since then they've dropped 3 consecutive games. They got spanked by the Washington Capitals 6-1, shut out by the New York Rangers 2-0, and then in their home opener lost to the Hawks 3-1. Obviously, their main issue is they can't seem to score. Let's take a look at their top 6 forwards in terms of ice time and their production so far. Alright, obviously the leader for the Montreal Canadiens in terms of ice time and production, which is usually the case, is Max Pacioretty. He's averaging just shy of 21 minutes per game. So far this season, he has 1 goal and is registering a -2. Next up for ice time, we've got Jonathan Drouin, who's pretty close to 20 minutes a game at 19:48, and he's only registered 1 assist and he's -3. That assist did come on Pacioretty's goal. After that, we start getting into some other forwards, which some of them, in my opinion, just aren't top 6 forwards. But Lehkonen is averaging over 17 minutes a game, has registered no points, a -2. Alex Galchenyuk is averaging 16-21 per game, no points, -1. Now, he normally would be a top 6 forward in my book. I don't have any issues with him as a talent level. Obviously, he's struggling this year. Next up, we got Brendan Gallagher, who does have a goal and assist, but is registering -2. Gallagher normally would be a first or second line player on a lot of teams as well. After that, we get down to Phillip Danault. Phillip Danault, and actually as well as Andrew Shaw. Their ice times are pretty similar, between 15 and a half minutes. Danault has 1 goal, -1. Shaw's yet to register a point and is -2. So there's your top 6 forwards. Now, in my opinion, the main issue is that they don't have a clear-cut number 1 center. Obviously, Jonathan Drouin was brought in to be possibly that guy. He is a very offensively talented player, but he's obviously still adjusting to the big spotlight in Montreal. There comes a lot of pressure, especially for a French-Canadian player. And he seems to be doing okay on the ice. The 1 goal he did set up Pacioretty for was a nice goal. He also did score the shootout winner when they beat the Buffalo Sabres in the season opener. One quick note as well, when we were reviewing the top 6 forwards for the Montreal Canadiens, obviously I did mention 7 guys, mainly because the ice times were so close. But that does make an important point, in my opinion, that some of these players are playing minutes of third-line guys, but they're getting more opportunities than a third-line player. So it goes to show that perhaps some of these guys are better suited for lower roles in the bottom 6, or maybe top 9, depending on how you look at it, and are asked to maybe do too much. The other couple of points here that I found a little bit puzzling when you look down at the Habs roster and their breakdown of players and what they're getting for ice time, etc., is a couple of things. One, Paul Byron is only averaging not even 12 minutes a game, 11:54 average ice time. He had a tremendous season for the Habs last year. He looked good in the preseason as well. I'm not sure why he's not getting more playing time. He would certainly probably do a better job than some of the guys getting closer to second and third line minutes. 11 minutes a game is pretty typical more for a fourth liner. The other thing is they signed Ales Hemsky to a pretty comfortable, I believe it was a 1-year, $1 million contract. And for a guy like Hemsky with a lot of experience, and who is certainly offensively talented, could turn out to be a bargain signing for the Habs. But so far, he hasn't really produced much of anything, and he's really not getting a whole lot of ice time. Hemsky is also only getting just over 11 minutes per game. So you get guys like Byron and Hemsky, and not to say that they're the answer and that they're going to be these magical top 6 forwards, but I think they could do a better job. And so far, you get guys like Lehkonen, who hasn't really done anything. Galchenyuk hasn't really done anything. But that's another story. I think with Alex Galchenyuk, I think the Montreal Canadiens have kind of really hindered his development. I personally think they've gone back and forth as to whether or not he's a center or a winger. What is Alex Galchenyuk? I don't know if the Montreal Canadiens really know, and they've probably confused the poor kid into not knowing himself. I mean, they can't seem to make up their mind. I think they need to decide what he is, and they needed to do this a couple of years ago, and let him develop. I think he would have been fine as a top, maybe not a top center, but at least a top 2 center for sure. The possibility of growing into a number 1 center role, and if they would have let him develop properly and given him the proper opportunity to maybe play a second line center role, they might have themselves a top line center now. But now, between, Jonathan Drouin might be the answer, but after that, they don't really have much. You get Philip Deneau, Thomas Plekanec. Plekanec is still getting 14 minutes of ice time per game. He should be getting the 4th line minutes, in my opinion, and guys like Byron and Hemsky should be getting a little bit more opportunity. Except not to say that they're going to be the saviors of the offense here, but it certainly can't get any worse. They've only scored 4 goals in 4 games. They're averaging a goal per game. 3 of those 4 goals come from guys in their top 6 or 7 ranking in forwards in terms of ice time. Clearly, that's just not good enough in this league. I mentioned another thing is a lot of people have always said for a number of years now that the Habs are as good as Carey Price will take them. They'll go as far as he can get them. And right now, look at a couple of years ago. They get off to a tremendous start, flying out of the gates. I think they were, won their first 9 or 10 or something crazy. I think they were undefeated in the first 12s. They had a couple, or undefeated in regulation, I believe it was. And then Price got hurt, and look what happened. They just tanked right down and ended up with a terrible season. Not to say that Carey Price has been terrible this year. I wouldn't say that so far. But he hasn't been fantastic either. Great goaltending can certainly steal you games in low-scoring affairs, but even great goaltending at this point, if Carey Price is at the top of his game and they're only giving him support of an average of 1 goal per game, that's just not going to get it done. I don't care how good Carey Price is, and I will certainly back up the argument that he's one of the greatest goalies in the world. But I don't care how good he is, he can't stop everything. He is going to let in the odd goal, and if you can't get him more than a goal per game for offense, it's just not going to work. Now, if you go back and watch one of my earlier videos before the season started, where I did my Eastern Conference standing prediction video, I did predict the Habs to make the playoffs, and I had them finishing in 3rd place in the Atlantic Division. At this rate, they might prove me wrong, but I'm still confident they can probably be a 3rd place or possibly a wildcard team if they get their act together. They certainly do have some talented top 6 forwards. A guy like Max Pacioretty, yes, he's off to a bit of a slow start, but he doesn't concern me. I know the odds of him coming out of it and still rebounding to be a 30-plus goal scorer, maybe more, 35, 40, who knows, is certainly something that he can handle doing. Their biggest problem is at center ice. You've got Drouin, who might be better as a winger. It's, I think, early in his career to really say that. I honestly think if you had a clear-cut number 1 center, and you could put Drouin on the wing, Pacioretty on the wing, and then you got a guy like Gallagher who can play more of a second-line winger role, and then maybe with another winger, I'm not sure who it would be, either you got a Byron or actually even a Galchenyuk for that matter. Then your top 6 is going to look a lot better. So now, how do they fix this? Do they make a trade? Well, that's not going to be easy. To go out and grab a number 1 center, certainly going to prove difficult. Now, I know they've been linked to a lot of the Matt Duchene trade rumors, as have probably 6 to 8 other teams. I'm not really sure what the Habs would have that the Avalanche would want in return. Now, if they still had Sergachev, if that's obviously who they traded for Drouin, he would be, if they were obviously willing to part with him, he would have been a good trade chip to maybe land a guy like Duchene. But so after they made the Drouin trade, I personally thought they might be out of the sweepstakes when it comes to Duchene. I just don't know if they have anything left that the Avs are going to want in return to land that type of player. I'm sure that the Avalanche are going to, I know the asking price is high. Where it's actually going to end up landing when the deal is done at some point, it's hard to say. But I'm sure they're going to want probably, at the very least, either a defenseman who can play right away or a top prospect defenseman. They're going to want at least a draft pick, a higher draft pick, and maybe either prospect or a forward who can play right away as well. That seems to be the rumors on the asking price. So do the Habs have what it's going to take to land Matt Duchene? I don't know. And if it's not Matt Duchene, who is it? But I tell you this, Marc Bergevin is going to have to make a move if they want to salvage this season. I know it's early, and I've stressed in my other videos for other teams that you really should wait a little bit before you push the panic button. But if I were in Montreal and I've seen 4 goals in 4 games, the defense hasn't played fabulous, and Carey Price has done the best he can do with what he's been able to play, I would be greatly concerned. If they don't find a way to score some goals, there's going to be a lot of long nights in Montreal. So Habs fans, tell me, what do you think? What do the Habs need to do? Personally, I think they need a number 1 center, but it's not going to be easy to do. Do they rejuggle their lineup and change their lines that maybe have a better approach? Obviously, they just went through a coach firing last year. I don't see that happening. Maybe it's time that ownership takes a look at Marc Bergevin. For the most part, I think he's been a pretty good GM, but really since last year, he doesn't want to seem to acknowledge the fact that they need center icemen. They don't have enough depth at that position, and they don't have a clear-cut number 1 center, in my opinion. Can Jonathan Drouin be that guy? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Is Jonathan Drouin their number 1 center? Is he the answer to their questions and it's just going to take a little time to get adjusted? Or should Bergevin be trying to make some moves, and should they be pushing the panic button here and making some changes? Let me know your thoughts. If you're just browsing through and this is your first time here, if you like debating hockey and you love all things NHL, then consider subscribing. Please consider giving this video a like, and I'll be talking to you soon.